Imagine a ritual so rare that it hasn't taken place for over 2,000 years, a ceremony written about in ancient scriptures, whispered in prophecies, and long awaited by generations. Today, that moment has stepped out of the pages of history and into reality. The Red Heifer Sacrifice, a symbol of purification and renewal, has been confirmed. But this is more than a religious act. It's a sign that resonates across faiths, cultures, and even the geopolitical stage. In the minutes ahead, we'll uncover why this matters now, what it means for the future, and how this one event could ripple through the world in ways few can imagine. Stay with me until the end, because by the time we're finished, you may never look at current events the same way again. The red heifer holds a unique and unparalleled position in the biblical sacrificial system, described in Numbers 19, where its ashes were used in the purification rites for those who had come into contact with death. According to the Torah, the heifer had to be completely without blemish, of a uniform red color, never yoked or used for labor, and entirely pure in its physical condition. Such stringent requirements have made the appearance of a qualifying red heifer an extremely rare occurrence in history. Rabbinic tradition notes that only 9 perfect red heifers were ever prepared from the time of Moses until the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE. The ritual itself was conducted outside the city walls of Jerusalem, with the animal being slaughtered and burned entirely. Its ashes collected and mixed with water from a natural spring to create the water of purification. This mixture was used to cleanse individuals and sacred objects that had become ritually impure. For the Jewish people, the red heifer is more than just a sacrificial animal. It represents spiritual readiness and the restoration of purity necessary for worship in the temple. In prophetic and eschatological thought, the successful preparation of a perfect red heifer is seen by some as a precursor to the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, a deeply significant event in certain interpretations of biblical prophecy. Many see the reappearance of such an animal in modern times as a divine sign that the prophetic clock is moving forward, while others interpret it as a purely symbolic or cultural milestone. The challenge of producing a red heifer that meets all the ancient scriptural requirements has led to international efforts, including breeding programs in Israel and other countries. Under the supervision of religious authorities and the Temple Institute, every hair of the animal must be inspected, as even 2 non-red hairs could disqualify it. The rediscovery or breeding of a perfect red heifer today is therefore a rare and monumental occurrence, sparking intense discussion among scholars, theologians, and observers of Middle Eastern religious affairs. This significance is magnified when connected to ceremonial acts or preparations that align with biblical precedent, leading to heightened anticipation for what might follow. In recent years, the emergence of several potential red heifers has attracted worldwide attention among religious communities, biblical prophecy watchers, and even geopolitical analysts. In September 2022, 5 young red heifers were brought to Israel from the United States under the supervision of religious authorities and organizations dedicated to preparations for the rebuilding of the temple. These animals, bred specifically to meet the stringent biblical requirements, were carefully selected after a rigorous inspection process to ensure they had no blemishes, injuries, or non-red hairs. Their arrival was hailed as an extraordinary development by those who view the red heifer as a prophetic sign, and their progress has been closely monitored since. The Temple Institute in Jerusalem, an organization deeply involved in the study and recreation of ancient temple practices, confirmed that these heifers could potentially meet the requirements for the ritual sacrifice described in the Book of Numbers. However, they also stressed that patience was necessary, as the animals needed to reach a certain age, traditionally between 2 and 3 years old, before being eligible for the ceremony. The process involves more than just breeding. It requires strict protection from any work or contact that might disqualify them, meaning the animals must be kept in controlled environments and handled in accordance with biblical law. The importation of these heifers marked the first time in modern history that a group of viable candidates had been brought to Israel specifically for the purpose of fulfilling the red heifer ritual. This has sparked renewed interest in whether the long-anticipated purification ceremony might be imminent. For many observers, especially those with an interest in prophecy, the presence of these heifers is a tangible sign that preparations for the restoration of temple worship are progressing. At the same time, the event has generated discussion and debate, as the reintroduction of this ancient practice carries deep religious, cultural, and political implications. The red heifer's ashes are essential for achieving the state of ritual purity required for anyone involved in temple service. meaning that without them, the traditional sacrificial system cannot be reinstated according to biblical law. Thus, the arrival of these heifers in Israel represents not just an agricultural success but a symbolic and potentially prophetic milestone, adding fuel to conversations about the timeline of end-time events and the future of religious life in Jerusalem. The Red Heifer Sacrifice, as described in the Hebrew Bible, holds a unique place in Jewish ritual law, because it is considered the only means to achieve purification from the highest form of ritual impurity, contact with the dead. According to Numbers 19, the ritual requires a perfect, unblemished female cow of a uniform red color, never yoked or made to work. This heifer must be slaughtered outside the camp, and its entire body, including hide, flesh, blood, and even dung, is burned. Into the fire are thrown cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool. The resulting ashes are then gathered and stored for future use in purifying those who have become ritually impure. These ashes are mixed with living water and sprinkled on the individual on the 3rd and 7th days of the purification process. Without this specific purification, no one can enter the sacred areas of the temple, nor can temple service be performed. This is why the red heifer ritual is viewed as absolutely central to the restoration of temple worship in Jerusalem. In rabbinic tradition, only 9 red heifers have ever been sacrificed from the time of Moses until the destruction of the Second Temple, and the 10th is believed to be connected to Messianic times. This rarity underscores the significance of any potential red heifer candidate, as the conditions for one are so precise that even a few non-red hairs can disqualify it. The ceremony itself is notable for its paradoxical nature. The priest performing the ritual becomes impure in the process, while those receiving the ashes are made pure. This deep symbolic meaning has fascinated scholars and theologians for centuries, with interpretations ranging from it being a test of faith to a divine mystery beyond human reasoning. The ritual's requirement to be conducted outside the Temple Mount also gives it unique logistical considerations, as a proper ceremonial site must be prepared according to ancient specifications. The ashes, once prepared, can last for generations, meaning that a single qualified red heifer could provide purification for many decades. This is why the discovery or breeding of a qualifying heifer is seen as a historic and prophetic moment, potentially unlocking the ability to resume the full spectrum of temple services that have been absent for nearly 2,000 years. For those who see biblical prophecy unfolding in modern times, the revival of this ancient ritual represents not just a religious milestone, but a step toward a future that has been awaited for millennia. The prophetic significance of the red heifer sacrifice has been a point of fascination and sometimes controversy within both Jewish and Christian eschatology. In Jewish tradition, the appearance of a perfect red heifer is considered a prerequisite for the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem, as its ashes are needed to purify the priesthood and the temple precincts. This link between the red heifer and temple restoration creates a bridge between ancient ritual law and modern prophetic expectation. Rabbinic sources speak of the 10th red heifer being connected to the coming of the Messiah, suggesting that its preparation could herald a new era in Jewish religious life. In certain streams of Christian theology, particularly among those with a dispensationalist or prophetic focus, the red heifer is seen as a sign of the end times, signaling that the conditions for the fulfillment of specific biblical prophecies are coming together. For them, the purification of the Temple Mount and the resumption of sacrifices are viewed as precursors to major prophetic events outlined in books like Daniel, Matthew, and Revelation. The geopolitical location of the Temple Mount, however, makes these ideas highly sensitive, given its significance to Judaism, Islam, and Christianity alike. This means that any public move towards such rituals can have wide-ranging political and interfaith implications. For some believers, the appearance and sacrifice of a red heifer is not merely a religious matter but a confirmation that God's prophetic timeline is advancing, and that pivotal historical and spiritual milestones are on the horizon. This belief fuels both anticipation and debate, as interpretations vary widely on what the event actually means in the larger prophetic picture. Some view it as a positive sign of divine restoration, while others see it as a trigger for turbulent events leading to the climax of human history. In both perspectives, the red heifer serves as a tangible, living symbol that ties modern times to ancient scriptures, connecting people's faith to a very real and visible event. The secrecy or openness with which such a sacrifice is conducted can influence perceptions, with some believing that a hidden or discreet ceremony may be intended to avoid political fallout, while still fulfilling the necessary prophetic requirements. The very fact that the red heifer continues to stir such deep spiritual expectation demonstrates how ancient biblical imagery still holds a powerful place in shaping the hopes, fears, and interpretations of people across cultures and religions today. The secrecy surrounding the reported red heifer sacrifice adds another layer of intrigue and controversy to an already sensitive subject. If indeed the ceremony took place quietly, without the fanfare or public acknowledgement that many expected, it suggests a deliberate decision by those involved to minimize political, religious, and social backlash. The Temple Mount, where such a ritual is symbolically connected, remains one of the most contested religious sites in the world, and any public move perceived as advancing preparations for a third temple could provoke intense reactions both in Israel and abroad. Conducting the ritual in secrecy could have been a way to fulfill the necessary religious requirements without igniting a political firestorm, or triggering protests from communities that see such developments as a threat. This clandestine approach also opens the door to speculation and rumor, with some seeing it as evidence that prophetic events are unfolding behind the scenes, hidden from mainstream media and public debate. For believers deeply invested in biblical prophecy, the idea that such a ceremony has already been completed can be both thrilling and unsettling. It suggests that God's timeline is advancing, perhaps faster than many anticipated, and that key events are taking place without the world fully realizing it. The quiet execution of the ritual may also reflect practical considerations, such as protecting the people involved from harassment, political pressure, or even threats of violence. Secrecy might also be tied to halakhic interpretations, where purity and precision of the ritual take precedence over public spectacle. However, this approach inevitably fuels conspiracy theories, with skeptics questioning the legitimacy of claims or wondering if details are being withheld for strategic purposes. In an age of instant communication and global news, the absence of clear evidence or official acknowledgement creates an unusual tension between those who accept the reports as truth based on trusted sources and those who demand public proof. Before believing such a significant act has taken place, the result is a heightened sense of mystery that keeps the discussion alive, encouraging both faith-driven anticipation and critical investigation. Regardless of whether the secrecy was motivated by caution, religious propriety, or political sensitivity, the mere suggestion that the red heifer sacrifice has occurred in our time has stirred passionate debate and reaffirmed the enduring power of ancient rituals to influence modern spiritual and geopolitical narratives. The significance of the red heifer sacrifice in biblical prophecy is immense, making it one of the most anticipated and debated religious events of modern times. According to Numbers 19 in the Hebrew Bible, the ashes of a perfectly red, unblemished heifer are required for the purification of those who have come into contact with death, a prerequisite for entering the temple in ritual purity. This means that for many who believe in the rebuilding of the Third Temple in Jerusalem, a key step in certain interpretations of end-times prophecy, the sacrifice of such a heifer is not just symbolic but a literal, necessary step. Jewish tradition holds that only 9 red heifers have ever been sacrificed in history, the last occurring around the time of the Second Temple's destruction nearly 2,000 years ago. Some rabbinical writings state that the 10th red heifer will be prepared by the Messiah himself, adding an even deeper prophetic weight to the ritual. In Christian eschatology, the event is often seen as a prophetic marker, signaling that the end-times timeline is accelerating, as it aligns with expectations of significant developments in Israel leading up to the return of Christ. For many believers, the presence of a qualifying red heifer in Israel and reports of its sacrifice suggests that ancient prophecies are no longer theoretical but actively unfolding. The fact that such a ceremony may have recently occurred brings with it a sense of urgency, as it bridges a vast historical gap between the ancient temple service and the modern world. This event also fuels geopolitical implications, as the rebuilding of the temple is deeply tied to the most contested religious site in the world, potentially sparking unrest among different faith groups. For some, the red heifer sacrifice represents hope, renewal, and divine promise, while for others it is a harbinger of conflict and upheaval. Its prophetic role thus carries both spiritual excitement and sobering caution. The convergence of religious anticipation, political sensitivity, and prophetic expectation makes the red heifer ceremony more than a ritual. It becomes a global talking point that stirs debate, faith, and speculation in equal measure. To those watching closely, it stands as a reminder that ancient instructions, preserved for millennia, still have the power to shape the beliefs and actions of nations in our own time. In conclusion, the confirmation of the Red Heifer sacrifice is not just a rare religious milestone, it is a moment that echoes across thousands of years of history, prophecy, and faith. Whether seen as a divine sign, a prophetic countdown, or a sacred tradition revived, its impact reaches far beyond the walls of Jerusalem. It stirs hearts, challenges minds, and reminds us that ancient words still carry living power in our modern age. This moment invites reflection, preparation, and an awareness that history may be moving faster than we think. Thank you for joining me on this journey into one of the most significant religious events of our time. May you carry this knowledge with clarity, wisdom, and a readiness for whatever lies ahead. Good luck, stay alert, and may peace be with you always.